What we're seeing is an attempt to reconfigure what it means to be a teacher, what it means to be a good school, and teachers are being trained in this new regime of truth. Melissa Benn says that there's a distinct lobby that finds regular expression in our newspapers and editorials, and this lobby claims, quote, it's low teaching standards, lax discipline, all due to, guess what? Progressive education. It's always there. It's progressive education, what did it? And this has led to, quote, generations of failure, particularly among poorer children. And Ben argues that the outward expression of this constant vilification of state schools is measured in increased exam pressure, new schools and further privatisation, driven by a climate of fear, doing untold damage to the daily working lives and the spirits of thousands of teachers and schools up and down the country. So what is it like if you're a teacher in this setting? What does it feel like? For some time, primary school teachers, indeed all teachers, secondary ones as well, have been subjected to the discipline and training of managerial discourses as well as the imposition of a performance culture. And the consequence has been that the primary school teacher is faced with constant demands to perform and demonstrate their achievement. And Jill Forrester says, well, the thing about this is that it valorises performance and it devalues or makes invisible the other important things of teachers' work, which might be conceptualised as caring activities. So she actually says that teachers are now involved in a wrestle with the demands of performing, doing your best for the inspection regime. If you're in a school and the inspectors are coming, you all hold together and do your best, don't you? Of course you do. But you're also trying to hold on and do your best for the children. But she says that the problem is that teachers then feel they're not trusted, they feel that they're in a tightly managed set of constraints. Let's have a look at what one of the teachers actually said. The kids come to us when they're 4, and they're whole little people, All their skills are there, well, most of them, and that's what's satisfying. And now when Ofsted comes in and the whole school is judged, nobody ever looks at a school and says how well that school turns a child into a whole person. And that's what's so important, isn't it? The atmosphere, the ethos of a school, that's not advertised about a school, not anymore. It used to be, but now it's all statistics and benchmarking, and it's wrong. It's about raising standards and performance, business jargon. Increasingly, we have to drive our provision through testing, limiting our curriculum, limiting what we do, and seemingly doing better, and still doing worse. It's an impossibility. So, what is it like for the urban primary school? Challenging schools will probably have several characteristics, maybe high numbers of children from working class backgrounds, many of whom will qualify for free school meals, which is our proxy for social class and children from low socioeconomic backgrounds. We may well have urban schools will be supporting many more children with what we call EAL, which is English as an additional language. These schools are likely to have children who are sicker because they're living in damp housing and they're not eating proper breakfasts. These schools will have a higher than average turnover of teachers and children. Each of these features of challenging schools means that you have to do something different. It's that little bit harder to get that journey started down the road. And what you actually get is an increase in workload for staff that wouldn't be experienced in schools with more socially advantaged intakes. So teaching and learning in challenging schools in high-pressure policy contexts is at least stressful and somehow, sometimes overwhelming. So I want to draw on a number of interviews, and I'm not arguing that everybody is like this and these stand for everybody. They're illustrative of the emotional life of being a teacher in a primary school in impossible times. That's all I'm trying to do, and you could find other bits of evidence. Teaching is good people doing good work, is it not? And this can mean that you hang on, and it can encourage you to stay, and you can keep trying to make a difference, even in the most impossible times, and maybe because of those impossibilities. Because if you go, who will be left? So that's what the situation is like for people in our schools. So what's it like for head teachers? Now, when we talk to heads who work in challenging schools, the sorts of people who work in these schools often have an affinity with the local area. They have a commitment to the community. They are of the community. And these people wrestle with performance as well as the demands of the job. James Trusty, a teacher that I interviewed, said, you know, we do the best we can, but not at the expense of learning and creativity. Remember, for some of our kids, school is the one place in their life, yeah? It's the one bit in the day that holds those kids together. They get a hot meal, they get care, and they get enrichment. They get to find out who they are. We've got to build on it. Yeah, we have to do what we have to do, and it gets out of hand. But, you know, it's a tension. It's really hard. And he does recognise what his parents and families are going through. And he says, you know, there's loads of research that says parents are central. And they are. But some of our families are vulnerable. The housing around here ain't great. It's hard to access good health and dentist care. It can be a tricky area. I mean, some of the estates are tough places to try to raise kids. And these parents are really giving it their best shot. They come in here, they see what their children are doing, they really, really want them to do well and be happy. But how to say this? So many things get in the way. Some of our mothers face obstacles and hurdles that would crush the strongest-hearted, and they keep going. They say things like about what's going on, well, you know, these sort of targets and things, they're not really that helpful. I mean, you know, our cohorts vary quite a bit. If you've got children coming in, if you're taking what we call refugees, you can have a school where 30% of the children move in 1 year. So if you're doing tests year on year, it's not the same kids. So your cohort tests don't really mean anything. You know, this head, Ralph says, I don't object to testing children. It's what they do with the information. And some of the journalistic phrases, it's like the fortunes of a football team, the bottom of the table, you know, relegation. And many of the sorts of measures are very crude. What concerns me, he says, is schools are doing a good job in difficult circumstances, and they end up being reprimanded. So what about the classroom teacher? What I actually want to do now is I want to draw on a set of emails that I received between 2012 and 13 from a senior teacher. And she's like, you know those teachers, she's so good you hate her because you'd like to be like that. You know? That's Laura. And she has given me permission to tell us a little bit about her inspections. We've had the call. I'm not saying or thinking we shouldn't be accountable, but the stress this way of doing things is off the Richter scale. Alison's on the point of collapse. She hasn't eaten since we've had the call. The senior leadership are in turmoil. All the staff are crying or looking ashen or both, and we're literally terrified. So that's the 22nd of January. They're getting ready, and they're coming in. Next day, it's been a disaster. We're fighting, but they judge leadership and management. We're fighting to be judged as satisfactory and not inadequate. It's like being in an unbelievable nightmare from which there's no awakening. The team is absolutely rigorous with data. They don't care about the human element. It's one of the most horrifying experiences I've ever had. It's truly awful. I really feel if this is the way teaching is going, then all that matters is the numbers, then it's goodbye from me. They haven't cared about anything other than the data. And then on the 24th, and I'm not putting up all of her emails, I get the next email. They've gone. We've been given notice to improve. I can't imagine what Michael Goves thinks is going to be the ultimate outcome of this policy. The new framework was rigorously, relentlessly applied. They took no interest in the children. For example, a child in my class has had a brother commit suicide this term. But hey, under no circumstances must his levels drop. I truly and deeply do not believe that this new regime is going to drive up standards. And then a little bit later on, in March, talking about what her workload is like. And I think this is really, she's a really experienced, really capable teacher. So I come in at 7 in the morning and I'm there till 7 or 8 at night. She's got 2 grown-up children. I don't usually work on a Saturday, hey, great, but I always do on a Sunday. The new thing is, and this is about the inspection regime, and now look at the language and look at how she's internalised the level talk. Look at how she's internalised the way she's talking about her children. And you have to be able to do that. You have to speak that speech, or you'll not be seen as very capable. It's nightmarish. It goes against the whole ethos of teaching. Now, this is a discipline. This is training teachers to be another sort of teacher. So you talk about, you know, they've got a 2A or, God help us, a 2B at Key S1 and be propelled into level 5. That's teacher talk. Or is it? And then she goes on, it all ended up fairly well. You know, we did okay. Outstanding progress in relation to our targets, and we sent packing a representative from the Department of Education who came in to wonder if he could turn us into an academy. So, hey, but look what happens. They've done okay. But, well, we've only got another visitor we've got the HMI, Her Majesty's Inspectorate, coming in September, then another inspection in the spring term to get through, and then after that, we'll be off the hook. It has to be said it was galling to see the reaction of all the officials. All they cared about was the results. So then we're waiting for the next set of inspections, and in February of this year, Meg, I'm leaving. I'll have to get out or something's going to happen to me. There's got to be a point when you say, enough's enough. I spent the whole of half-term working, except for when she came in to see me. No life at all, and I wasn't home until 11, and I was back again at 7:30. I feel as low as I've ever felt, and seriously need to consider the future. I'm going to end up going under. What a nightmare. We await the call, clinging to our chairs and nearly fainting every time the phone rings. Now, it could be argued that Laura's school needed some stimulus to improve, and that perhaps she and Alison weren't efficient enough, and that the school has been saved, and the children's progress is assured. But does anyone think that this is the best way to achieve these sorts of goals? Now, you might not believe this, but I've been put in the section of the conference called Reclaiming the Culture of Our Schools. And what I am going to finish off with is by suggesting that we do need to hold on to and reclaim the culture of primary schools. And I found this absolutely wonderful picture, and it's not a London school, as you can tell, but I just thought praise to some of the beautiful schools and some of the wonderful classrooms, and I saw a wonderful early years tape on the NZEI website this morning. Praise to the wonderful things that are going on in your schools. And what I'm actually arguing is that we need to hold on to this culture and make sure that it's not driven by international comparison, nor by political ideology, but by a much broader range of evidence related to children, the evidence that you have. Listen, I was an early years teacher. I was in what we call a reception class. I had 5-year-olds, and I had a very difficult little girl called Nikki, and she was very disruptive. And, you know, she once bit me, and I had like a little teeth mark around my hand. She was quite a difficult person. And sometimes on a day when she hadn't kicked another child, that was a really good day. So I'd say, would you go home? Nikki, you've been brilliant today. You've been fantastic. You've had really good relationships with everybody in the room. Well done. And that was an achievement, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. It was brilliant. Now, you know the sorts of evidence that relates to children and their world and their education. And, you know, we've got to have a vision that doesn't deny the need for economic competitiveness, but does believe that other educational goals are equally important. The sorts of goals I've heard you all talk about so powerfully, particularly as I've gone round the tables. My talk today has been about thinking about what it's like to do primary school teaching in impossible policy times. And teachers do need to be able to hold on. And one of the aspects that I think that is helping our teachers hold on and building resilience comes from what researchers in my country call, quote, timely support by wise leaders. Head teachers, principals, who are sensitive to context and yet who hold on to a respectful commitment to enabling children to learn in ways that they see related to their professional knowledge about how children learn. You have a lot of knowledge. Ralph says we spend a lot of time looking at learning styles. It's not just literacy catch-up programs that are going to do it. We need a really good curriculum. A second aspect in retaining the culture is to keep questioning the myth that all teams stand a chance of winning, however uneven the playing field. And I think that's a fight that we have to keep making. Policymakers and reformers need to acknowledge the influence of poverty, exclusion, and material lack. And the final point to remember is that teachers carry with them their own values and their own beliefs about teaching and learning. And they try to keep on doing a good job as much as they can in impossible times. They wrestle with performing and caring simultaneously, and sometimes this struggle becomes overwhelming. But what we have to hold on to is that, you know, in these pressures, teachers trade upon creativity and inventiveness to make things work. And what do you think happened to Laura? She's still working with Alison in the same school. She's a stalwart of primary education. She's withstanding the storm. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.